YouTube.
Now you
So-
are, now told me you are live.
Okay, I don't see, okay, I do see it.
All right,
There's 84 people watching.
you're good.
Hello. Welcome to the Zenith Fellowship info session panel. Sorry for the technical difficulties in the virtual world. It happens sometimes, but I think we are actually live now. So thank you for your patience. We have a great panel of representatives from some of our host companies. We have one of our mentors here, and it will all be moderated by the lovely Bryn from Space Generation Advisory Council. I will give you a brief overview of the program if you're not already aware, but then we'll go right into the panel as you all have been waiting. And just a reminder to add your questions on the Slido using the code 345073. And a reminder again that applications are open until the 22nd of October. So very quickly, the Zenith Fellowship combines three different aspects to deliver a fellowship for Canadians seeking to get their foot in the door in the sector. So we combine work experience, senior level mentorship, and the building of a community of passionate leaders. So if you're selected as a Zenith Fellow, you will be paired with an executive mentor who will be with you throughout the year to help you as you prepare for an internship, as you go through your internship, and afterwards to help you reflect on that experience. You'll also be paired with a host company, and there you will conduct a 4-month minimum internship and learn about space and work in space. And you'll also join a class of awesome fellows like yourself who are also looking to get their foot in the door in the Canadian space sector. And these will be your friends for life, hopefully. So this program is following the footsteps of some really great established programs already in the United States, namely the Brooke Owens Fellowship is for women and gender minorities, has been around for the past 5 years. And that's how I got involved. So I was a Brooke Owens Fellow in 2020. And a big part that I saw as being a part of that was I was the only Canadian. And so I met up with our team at the Zenith Canada Pathways Foundation. We built this program to kind of deliver that same experience, the awesome one that I got working at a company and getting a mentor and joining this awesome group of people here in Canada through the Zenith Fellowship. So aside from Brooke Owens, there's also the Matthew Isaac Fellowship Program for any US students, the Patty Grace Smith Fellowship for any American Black students who are in the first couple years of college or university, and the Z Factor Fellowship for any underrepresented groups, and it's also open internationally. So through the Zenith Fellowship Program, you'll have the opportunity to potentially be matched with one of the following companies. And we have two folks here today representing Sinclair Interplanetary and Wyvern. So everyone who is involved in this program, they're all really great space companies, and they're super excited to host you if you are selected as a Zenith Fellow, to give you experience and to help you learn about space. We also have some awesome mentors from both in Canada as well as in the US. They're all Canadians who are leaders in space and are really excited to meet you and work with you throughout the year and help you and guide you on your way. So we have one of them here, Angelique, and she'll talk a bit about herself. And yeah. And another component of the fellowship will be the Fellowship Summit. And this will take place in the summer of next year during your internship. You'll have the opportunity to kind of go to a location that we have yet to decide and meet with the class of fellows. Obviously, if it's safe to do so, to have an in-person event. Through this, you'll meet with your class, work on different projects together. You'll also have the opportunity to meet with other mentors within the fellowship, as well as host companies. And it should altogether be a really great experience to kind of solidify your experience with the fellowship program as you are entering the rest of your career. So As a reminder, what our eligibility is, this information can all be found on our website at zenithpathways.ca. We are focusing on underrepresented and disadvantaged groups as we understand that there are a lot of difficulties in trying to enter the industry, but we are also open to anyone who is eligible from our criteria. So we're focused on undergraduate students or equivalents, so college, vocational training, anything like that of that level, undergraduate, and any recent graduates from similar programs as well within the last 3 years. We're also looking to hire at our companies Canadian citizens, permanent residents, or people granted refugee status in Canada. And you have to be available to work next summer. So if you're looking to apply, please join our Discord server. We have a great group of folks on there all looking to apply. And even if you aren't successful this year, it's a great way to keep in touch and then try again next year and even just make some friends. So make sure to join that. So that's pretty much my spiel, and we'll get into the panel and I'll pass it on to Brent. And just a reminder to add your questions on the Slido. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction to the Zenith Fellowship Program. I think everyone is really excited to be here to basically kick off the applications for this one-of-a-kind program and first-of-its-kind program in Canada. It's an honor to be here speaking with such a diverse array of space talent from across Canada, so that we can hear about how all these different companies and mentorship can help you in advancing your space career. So I'll now kind of go around the panel and allow everyone to introduce himself. And I guess although you were just speaking, I'll start with you, Hira, as the co-founder and director of Zenith Pathways, to give just like a quick overview of who you are and how you got here.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you just heard me speak, but I am, as Bryn mentioned, the co-founder and one of the directors for Zenith Canada Pathways. I was a 2020 Brooke Owens Fellow who interned at Planet in San Francisco. And so as I mentioned, my big motivation is to bring that same great experience here. I'm currently a graduate student at Western University in the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department for the Institute for Earth and Space Exploration. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. And next I'll move on to one of the mentors, Angelique, who is one of the executive mentors and also works at Flash Forest. So can you give us a little introduction to yourself and what you're hoping to offer through the mentorship?
Sure, thanks Brandon, thanks Hira. My name is Angelique Ahlstrom. I'm the co-founder and chief strategy officer of Canada's first climate tech company that merges drones, artificial intelligence, GIS mapping, and plant science to scale the rate of reforestation. Before that, I was a graduate of the inaugural program, ISU, at NASA. We conducted the first commercial space entrepreneurship program. I learned so much, and I found that was totally missing element here in Canada. Like Kira mentioned, the Brooke Owens is such a good model for this program, and I'm really excited to bring what I learned and what I felt was missing in my experience as the only Canadian in this US program to Canada.
Thanks for sharing that and your experience with us and with the Zenith program. Next, we have Julia, who is an aerospace engineer at Sinclair Interplanetary, and which organization is a host organization for the Zenith program. So maybe you can give us a little rundown of your career and Sinclair Interplanetary.
So I think the company is easier to talk about. So Sinclair, in the grand scheme of things, in the space sector, we mostly work on satellites and specifically the components that go into the navigation system of satellites. And more recently, we have been acquired by Rocket Lab, which is incorporated as a US company, but had its start in New Zealand. And has operations very heavily in New Zealand still, and has expanded into the US and now into Canada with our acquisition. And that means a lot of different things we're still figuring out, but it means that our company is going to become more involved in launch and large-scale satellite operations across the globe. And as for me, I basically work as an engineer, and my most immediate background is in mathematics, but before that, I did a few other things. And if you have diverse interests, I guess I'm a good person to talk to because my path into aerospace was kind of a fluke. So yeah, I have a lot of interest, but I am really excited and happy to be working in the space industry and specializing finally.
We're going to have to dive into that fluke falling into the industry later. And last but not least, we have Curtis, who's the co-founder and vice president of products at Wyvern. So maybe you can introduce us to both Wyvern and your early career in the space industry.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm really excited to be here. And I'm really excited to talk about Wyvern. So Wyvern is providing the agricultural industry with specialized data from CubeSats. And that specialized data is called hyperspectral imagery. So helping farmers and the ag industry understand their crop health, understanding various metrics around like water usage. So it has kind of a nice like economic goal, but also a sustainability focus. And we're launching our first satellites are planned to go up in April of 2022. So our company came out of the Canadian CubeSat project, specifically AlbertaSat. So I actually wasn't part of AlbertaSat. So it's actually the other three co-founders who are the really experts in CubeSats. But how I kind of got here was I did like a bachelor's and master's in engineering. And then I was working in the defense industry. And then our CEO, Chris Robson, who I was friends with, had this like really exciting idea and like just really convinced me that like I had to like help start this company. So that's how I got here. So I guess kind of like Julia, a little bit of a fluke that like I was in this space, but I'm really excited to get to know everyone on the panel and talk a bit more about how people can get involved in the aerospace industry, because I think it's great.
Yeah, and looking forward to that discussion. I think the kind of common theme that we'll probably discover throughout this is the kind of fluke of falling into it, and the hope that programs like the Zenith Fellowship are going to help have a more direct path as opposed to people falling into it. So to kind of kick off the discussion, I wanted to kind of address the fact that this is kind of the first program of its kind in Canada for providing this kind of bridging mechanism between undergrad and actual careers in the space industry. So as kind of a question to all panelists, from your perspective at your various companies, I'm wondering why you think now is an important time for a program like this, and what impact do you think it's going to have for the outcomes of students in Canada? So I'll start, I'll go in reverse order. I'll start with you, Curtis.
So I'll kind of approach it from two levels. Like the first is from our company side, and like we personally like love interns. So having an intern, they get like such impactful projects, and like they kind of start working on important things on like day two, like once they get like a SolidWorks license or like whatever part of the company they're in. So I think like the Zenith program is going to feed into a lot of companies like ours where interns can get really meaningful and important work. And that's going to be really helpful in their careers and also to get excited about the space industry. I think the other piece is that having these programs can help like underrepresented or groups that have barriers to entry that might not otherwise be able to apply, because like to fund an internship can be a little bit expensive at times for companies. But this really lets you help remove, like you need to be able to provide paid internships, and this lets you do that. So people who might have some barriers can come and work in the aerospace industry, at least addressing part of the problem. And
yeah,
That's it.
Yeah, no, and I think that is a really important point about making sure that we can actually provide access for people that don't always have access, and making sure that what the space industry of tomorrow is one that actually reflects the makeup of Canada, not just those that have the privilege of being able to access it easily. So I think that's one really important point that we are going to be circling back on later. So I'll pose the question now to Julia. So why do you think now it's important to have a program like this in Canada, and what impact do you see it having?
It's probably been important for a long time, but it's been lacking, to be honest. And I say that with a particular perspective of an American in Canada, and I look at things in the industry from a bit more of a global socio-political point of view sometimes. And I really don't think that any one country should have hegemony space. I don't want to live in a world that perpetuates monocultures of power into our orbital space, our extraorbital space. And I think that not only powerful countries like Canada really really builds an interest base in the future of extraterrestrials, but lots of countries. Bangladesh has a space program. I would love to see them have resources as well. And I think how a lot of students will find this program helpful is to, one, get a real sense of what jobs are in space if you're not an astronaut, because a lot of us had the space ambassador experience in primary school, where former astronaut or comes to talk to your school, and basically no one becomes an astronaut, just 0% population. But a lot of people can actually work in commercial space, and it's still excellent work, and it's still exciting and impactful. So learning what those are, that's also just learning what different paths can get you there, and actually say is what skills you need. So it's not really about, I think, what formal steps you go through, but what can you do? You've been, and by getting work experience, you can really see what the component skills of a good space professional are in whatever your interest is, whether it's engineering or PR or communications.
So yeah, it's I think the other thing that, just to kind of highlight at the end of that, is the idea that the space industry is not only engineers. It's a whole bunch of skill sets that make it up. Like you said, PR, marketing, comms, business development, like science, obviously, engineering. There's so many different components that pull together to build that. And I guess what you're saying is that through these sorts of programs, you're going to have an opportunity to kind of get exposure to all that, and maybe find your own path within it, perhaps less falling into it like some of us had over the years. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Angelique, I'll head it off to you. What is important about this program for you in this moment in time, especially as someone, I think, having gone through other programs like this in other countries?
I think what's particularly characteristic of our time is, while government remains to be a key driver of innovation in space, right now we're witnessing the privatization of the space industry, which is drastically making it more accessible for anyone, essentially, with or without degrees, to put things into space, to start tech-based companies for relatively low cost. And so there's a lot of funding as well for this in Canada and through the private investment sector. I think a lot of young people simply don't know where to look for resources, and the role that entrepreneurship in the space industry can play for driving larger, more recurring budgets of the government into these sectors, as space will increasingly play a a key role in economic growth for Canada and well beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess kind of, I know here, well, you have kind of already spoken from the presentation into why the program is important now. So what I'd like to is kind of run off what you were saying there about how the it's kind of a budding time in terms of the space industry, and a lot of startups and a lot of funding becoming available for being able to have new space startups kind of pop up. But how, you know, as part of this, can we make sure that, you know, as these startups are coming, it doesn't become dominated by people that have perhaps already had certain privileges in order to get the education to reach those positions where they can create startups, or things like that. How can we make sure that we are working towards a more like inclusive space sector as all this funding is becoming available? So maybe I can start with you, Angelique, now that you kind of started on that space startup path.
Well, yeah, inclusivity spans across many different points. So there's, of course, gender. I think elevating more female leaders in the space industry is going to be increasingly important. Of course, people with different ethnic backgrounds, both domestic and international, are going to be an increasingly important role. Also, people with different non-conventional educational backgrounds is really important. As someone mentioned earlier, space isn't just about engineers, it's about business developers, policy management. It really is a widespread coordinated effort. And I think the more inclusivity we can bring at a small scale in Canada, the more versed we will be when we have to scale this at a large global coordinated effort, in order to meet the increasing demands that lie up ahead with climate change, with developing the Lunar Gateway, with going to Mars, and hopefully beyond.
Yeah, because I think we want to make sure that all voices are a part of those decisions as all this, new funding is becoming available, all these new markets opening. We want to make sure that it's not driven by a single voice. Does anyone else want to jump in and kind of offer their thoughts on how we can work towards a more inclusive space sector? Beyond the obvious, which is, I guess, the Zenith program, which is actively trying to do that within Canada, at least. I guess maybe we can go to our host organizations. How within your own organizations do you try to work towards inclusive policies within your organizations? Maybe I can start with you, Julia.
Sure. I don't have a super cohesive response to that because my approach is very situation based. I would say, for context, we are a very small company. We are a team of 10 extremely efficient full-time employees, and we have a rotating selection of very talented interns to come in and out throughout the year. So at any given point in time, you might expect to find 13 of us around. And I think I actually have had measurable impacts on the diversity of our organization since I came on board almost 4 years ago. And I say that because I think the geographic and skill set breadth of our interns has increased since I've come on board, partly because I do things like this and I meet people and I try to seem friendly. I've also had some involvement in our practices regarding collections of resumes, and I generally try to eliminate policies or question policies that I think have an adverse effect on someone new coming into the team with circumstances that just haven't been relevant before. So for example, no one in company history has ever been pregnant, like in 20 years, because the company has been small for a long time. So certain things like this become real when you're working with lead, and lead is dangerous for everyone, but especially for unborn infants. And so there's just all these little things that can come up. And I just try to be vigilant to maintain a space where really everyone is welcome, not just emotionally, but very practically. So that's my focus, but I don't have a unit philosophy, or our company doesn't either. It really comes down to who's working for us given time. And I like to think that I've had a constructive presence, but I guess time will tell.
Yeah. But really, I mean, I think the important thing that you mentioned there is just the openness in general to, different viewpoints, different ideas. How about you, Curtis? How is inclusivity important within Wyvern?
Yeah, it's a great question. So something kind of interesting about Wyvern is that out of the 6 executives we have, actually 4 are women, and then 2 of the 4 co-founders are female. So that's actually pretty unusual. When we go to startup conferences, I think it's a little bit like obvious, like when you have all the co-founders up somewhere. And I think like trying to maintain kind of an environment where, like Julia basically said the core pieces, it has to be really intentional, and you have to think about, like as a small company, you have to hire the best people for the job, and sometimes that means you have to reach out and find some people to actually, if you want some of those diversity, you want to maintain that like really core important piece of like diversity, and making sure that there aren't barriers to people joining or continuing to be employed. So Julia mentioned like some really important pieces that, that's not something I naturally would have thought about, but trying to identify the pieces that are barriers are critically important. So it has to be like really intentional. And as a startup, I think we're with the same size as Sinclair. And it's kind of similar. We're like, it's this pretty small team, and you have to, there's maybe not a policy, but you do have to think about it regularly and make sure that it's addressed.
No, that's absolutely right. And I mean, does anyone feel comfortable, like, have there been any barriers that you've experienced personally, in your space career that you overcame, and how did you go about overcoming that? If anyone feels comfortable sharing. No, unless no one needs to have any, no one needs to jump up. But are there any people that have experienced anything that they'd like to share?
So I personally haven't. Like I think it's obvious like what group I belong in, like just another white guy. But like I have had mentors like tell me like things to like really watch out for, or like try to make sure. Like one of our mentors, she was pregnant and like said, like if one of your employees becomes pregnant, like you need to be like really empathetic, and like these are the things you should really consider and like make. So I think there's things that I have to rely on other people to tell me if there might be some barrier we have to address.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's helpful, but it's kind of like try to listen to the people around you. And
yeah. And yeah, like creating proper like open dialogue and the ability to have that kind of active engagement through that kind of mentorship. So the next topic I wanted to jump onto was just mentorship in general. So maybe starting with you here, I was wondering how mentorship has guided you in your career, particularly considering that you came from the Brooke Owens Fellowship.
Yeah, definitely. Since I was in my early career, I think I landed in space and like feeling like this is where I want to take my career in like first or second year of undergrad. And immediately I just like wanted to just see people like myself. It was very hard to find other women of color in the industry who I could, relate to and who could also guide me, and I could see in positions that I would want to be in. And so over the years, I've had a lot of mentors who have been kind of unofficial mentors. And then I in Brooke Owens had an official mentor, but one of them would be like Julia. When I did work at Sinclair, she was a great mentor of mine there. And she's completely right. Like someone who is open and like, you know, that you can talk to and like kind of talk about things that you're afraid about or worried about messing up. Like just sometimes you need to be outside of yourself. So I found that as something that has been a barrier that I've caused myself, is just like doubting myself or worrying about things. And having that sounding board of being another person who that you trust has been really helpful. And I've done that in different ways throughout the different things I've worked on with my own outreach or within an internship. And then through Brooke Owens, when I had like an executive mentor, she's really awesome. Her name is Charity Whedon from Asha Scale. It was just great. It was just great to have this person who like met with me regularly and was like, okay, like what can I help you with? And like having someone like formally ask that, it was like, whoa, okay, like I'm important. Like you want to help me with my career. I think that helped me a lot with especially my confidence as well. When I saw it dwindling, they kind of reminded me of kind of things that I had talked about prior, reminding me of things that I might want to do and kind of help me on that way. So I think it's really important to have a mentor if you can, and that there are a lot of barriers to that as well. And I think through Zenith, where that's what we want to provide is like a formal mentor. But I would also encourage anyone to get those informal mentors, find people, whether your peers or people that you are admire, just like reaching out to them, like help me, you know, because it's a community. I find space is so welcoming and everyone wants to help each other. So yeah.
Hopefully everyone watching feels as comforted to apply and be a part of this community, because it definitely sounds like a welcoming one. I guess now jumping over to the flip side, Julia, having been a mentor, I guess at one point, how like what kind of guided you in your decision making as a mentor?
Oh, I don't know. I think I'm going to make stuff right, but it might be true. So I think that I've had a long-standing of ethical conviction in my life, even as a young child. And I also have a sort of strategy people where I think if someone has the potential to do the work, your physical attributes have nothing to do with whether or not you should do that work. And I just feel so strongly about this that it seems almost irresponsible of me not to at least be a baseline level of friendly and welcoming and supportive to anyone new coming on board. And we have had, fortunately, some people who check off various diversity boxes come through our doors. But you know, everyone is going to face challenges in the aerospace industry, and I think you know we're not going to deny levels of support to people who on the surface like belong to the majority group in the field. I also think that it's just smart for business. It's not from diverse backgrounds or like charity cases. They're actually very good for the industry on the number of empirical grounds. And so I think that there's really a mutually beneficial symbiosis to be had. I've learned so much from our interns. And I say that as a person who checks off some diversity boxes, but not all. And I continue to have a sensibility for all the expertise and talent that all of our interns bring. So I think those are the main points. One, I just feel compelled to for whatever reason, and two, it's good for the company and it's good for my learning.
We always love a good win-win. That's great. So, you know, not only is the the like kind of workforce itself is rapidly changing, I think for the better in terms of the diversity. I mean, the technology itself is also rapidly changing. And we have tons of innovations that are kind of propelling this fast evolving space market. So I guess posing this question to starting with you, Angelique, I'm curious how, you know, as a mentor, particularly within the Zenith Fellowship, how you can mentor people for the kind of unknown jobs that we're going to be seeing in the future, like 10 years from now, where, you know, everything's changing so quickly within the space industry, it's kind of hard to keep up. So I'm curious how you kind of preface your mentorship with that in mind.
That was a great question. Well, I was in a similar boat when I was at my program. I was this question mark of experience as opposed to these clean cut cohorts of mine. And I think the mentorship I have was excellent. One of my mentors was Andrew Aldrin, and he had obviously quite a leadership background in the space industry. And I found that in many ways he helped define what my skill sets, what possible roles I could grow into were, things I'd never even considered before. Sometimes it just takes conversations with someone who has seen it all to sort of mold together what you could potentially explore as a career avenue. And in addition, there are a lot of innovations happening, both in space and areas that space could be applied to. So I think this cross-sector, interdisciplinary way of looking at where we can apply space is kind of how I like to look at it as well. So I was interested in dual applications of space technology for both Earth and space. And so UAV technology and the sensors, the satellite imagery kind of all falls under the field that we're in. And of course, there's many subsectors of that. And I think both understanding what type of individual I'm working with, what their background is and what skill set and kind of personality type would be best fit for them, and the types of problems that they're most interested in are all considerations I could help mentor them with in terms of where they best fit in the whole sector. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a really great approach, and I think it is one of the really exciting things, like you said, this kind of like cross industry, like various applications of all the technologies that we're advancing, but all the applications of those technologies. And that kind of then brings me to Wyvern, which obviously has been advancing some new approaches and innovative approaches to applications within the space industry. So how like leading up to the creation of Wyvern, how did you kind of pull it all together? Like what sort of all of the things coalesce together to allow that to form as an idea in a company?
Actually, we wrote a master plan when we were 12 years old. No, I'm just kidding. So I think it's a really good, interesting question. Like how did like what factors are required to like cause a startup like Wyvern, even GHGSat to occur? And I think there is some really basic investment in research. There's some investment in like student groups and programs like Zenith, where you're essentially providing funding to do something like Alberta Sat or the Canadian CubeSat program. Because without that, and without that experience of launching a CubeSat, like Wyvern wouldn't exist. And I think there's a bit of luck and like getting the right people together. But I think that's a hard question. Like you almost needs, I'm not sure if I'm even qualified to answer that. It seems like there is like this confluence of factors where there's kind of like an ecosystem and really like passionate people and like kind of a bit of luck to bring those people all together with like really interesting ideas, and then support from like starting a company like this or GHGSat or Sinclair usually requires some sort of support from granting agencies or like private funders as well. So being able to connect to those is usually really kind of a prerequisite. I'm not sure if that answered the question, but no,
it did. It was a poorly formulated question as well. So thanks for pulling that together. But yeah, no, I think you covered it. And just for the sake of time, because I do want to jump over to some of the questions that we've received from people watching online, I just wanted to pose one last question to everyone to kind of answer it kind of quickly, is what is the one thing that you wish someone had told you before you embarked on your career in the space industry? So I'll start with you, Hira.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
No problem. What is one thing that you wish someone had told you before you embarked on your a career in the space industry?
Honestly, like, this was told to me later, and I honestly wish I knew it before, is that I wish someone told me that you don't just need to be an aerospace engineer to work in space. I was in electrical engineering, and for some reason I thought, oh, no one's gonna want me. And then I actually met someone from Sinclair at a conference. They were like, we actually need electrical engineers. So that's kind of how I got into my first space internship. But, just like that encouragement of like, whatever background you're doing, if you're interested in space, that's where you want to be, like, there is a pathway. I think like that would have been really helpful to know. And I think a lot of us, all of us on this panel, want to encourage people because we all have different backgrounds and how we got here. So yeah, would have been nice to know much earlier on before I was sad.
Yeah. So basically, to all those people online, it doesn't matter what your career back or your educational background is. Be sure to consider applying to the program. Angelique, I'll go to you now.
Yeah, I could relate to that. I remember like trying to go back to school for physics while I was like doing my master's. Is just like not a good idea. But yeah, you don't need to be an engineer to be in the space industry. And I think that something I wish someone told me was maybe don't be afraid to move the needle. I think space is traditionally a very process-driven place, and there are a lot of limitations and rules around people's thinking of what they can do. So we need a lot of wild, fearless innovation, to get to the next tier in space. And yeah, I think bold entrepreneurs, bold people in companies or in government are needed. So don't be afraid to move the needle.
Be bold. I like that. Julia?
I wish someone had told me just maybe a few months to a year sooner correctly to crush the imposter syndrome. I think that there is a mindset that is very approval seeking among people who from a background that for along whatever axes doesn't match what they think the prototypical person in the space industry is. And it's at least useful to think about the possibility that maybe everyone feels that way. And in crushing that feeling, whatever way you can is your job to do what you need to do. And there are also people who help you do that and who have done it themselves. So be brave in that process.
No, I think that's one important thing, as someone who has lived with imposter syndrome myself, the most important thing is just remembering that probably a good 50%, if not more, people in the room are experiencing the exact same feeling. So always value yourself and know that you deserve to be there. And last but not least, Curtis.
Yeah, so this is going to be kind of cliche, but there's a Steve Jobs like quote, and like I don't remember the exact words, but it's like something like you can't really set out a plan for your career and expect it to like be like really linear, but only in hindsight you can kind of see the threads. Like I'm thinking about back where a lot of our viewers probably are in like university, and like it can be pretty tricky. Like my career in engineering didn't start very well for a lot of reasons. I can tell people later, like it's just tough to get a job and tough to like really get off the ground. And it can be really tough, but like try to really believe in yourself to like, you're like going to be able to get through it. And like find, if you see something really interesting, like kind of Julia said, be brave and try to pursue it. Cause I think think it is really, you really want to plan that career out that's like perfect, but it's not really going to happen that way, and like that's okay. And like it'll work out in the end. Like, you know, just keep pursuing those opportunities and keep working hard, and I think you'll be okay. So hopefully that helps, because I know at that stage in university it can be really tough, and you know, if your career doesn't start out the way you want, it can be kind of really tough. So
Yeah, it always works itself out. It just matters about staying at it and being always remembering what your goals are and your passions are, so that you can continue pursuing it. I, for one, spent a good year after my master's program looking for a job, and was doing musical theater instead of the space industry. So, you know, just keep the goal in mind and you'll get there eventually. It always works out that way. Thank you so much to all the panelists for all those incredible insights. I'm now turning over to the Slido, where you've all been posting your questions and voting them. So the way that I'm going to work through them, so there are a few questions here that are more program specific, and I think those questions are going to be answered directly by after this presentation, and we'll just address questions that are more directed towards the panelists. So I'll start with the one that was the highest voted one, which is, what would you say strong qualities of young engineers are in the space industry? What do you think are the important qualities that make a good engineer in the space industry? So I'll pass that off, I guess, to the engineers that are here to maybe comment. Does someone want to field that question?
I can try. Oh, sorry, Julia. I'll let Julia take it away.
Okay. So there are a lot of very good answers to this question. One I'll focus on because I think it's a bit specific to the space industry, though it does generalize a little bit to other high stakes industries. A constant awareness of the implications of doing in your job. And that, I guess it really boils down to mindfulness, attention. And in the space industry, even with increased access to space, you kind of only get one shot to get a mission right. And that means that every step going into a mission has to be solid, and you have to be willing to check things over and over again. You have to be willing to check your numbers over and over again. You have to be willing to check goals. You have to be willing to get feedback about when you've messed up. You have to be very forthcoming when you have messed up, and you have to remember that it's all in service to the final big day going right. And I think the intensity of in that respect is a pretty special environment. And I would say if you have done any performance activities, like giving a speech in real time, like giving a physical performance in real time, or anything that happens live, that you do live, I think it's great practice for that. That's some of my background personally, and it served me enormously because I can handle a lot of pressure. So yeah, in addition to technically strong, there's a psychological aspect too that's very important.
No, that's all really great advice. So hopefully to Anonymous, they got that question answered to them. So moving down the next questions that are not specifically program related. There's one here asking about what was helpful in the application, inclusions in the application process for the Brooke Owens Fellowship, but maybe I'll just make that question maybe more general, and for Hira and Angelique about what, did you put into your applications to the various programs that you were a part of that you think might be useful to include in an application to the Zenith Fellowship program?
Sure. I'll just speak really quickly on that. So yeah, we like to think that we are modeling a lot after Brooke Owens in terms of the same types of things we want to get out of the application. I myself just kind of had fun with it. I was like, this is an opportunity finally for me to like showcase who I am, not just like my technical ability. And so that's kind of what we want as well, is just like show us things that you wouldn't necessarily put on like an application to a job, but like, because this is a fellowship, right? It's not just a job, it's a job as well, but show us like the cool tricks and skills that you have that nobody knows about. For me, I actually used to be a slam poet, so I used to actually perform. So I took this as an opportunity to kind of showcase that artistic side of myself. And I recorded a video and I wrote a poem specifically for my application. And I think that helped. And it was just me showing myself. So I would encourage you to do the same.
And Angelique?
Yeah, I would say that in addition to all those wonderful tips, having a narrative alongside that is really important. I've gone over so many incredible resumes before, although they do seem a little bit disparate when they're not able to kind of connect why they studied this and why they jumped here. And so when someone's able to supplement their vast experience with a really neat logical narrative of what the rationale behind all these decisions was, and then sort of fit this opportunity kind of at the end of that to kind of take the cake for the next piece of their journey. I think that that's always really compelling path to follow.
Yeah, no, that's great. And we're just running out of time, but as a final kind of wrap up, there was a question here about what you think is the most challenging aspect of the program, but for the sake of everyone's ability to contribute, I'm going to expand that to more. What is what are you hoping people will gain out of this program? So I'll start with you, Hira, and then we can circle around the room, and that will be the last question of the evening.
All right, so what we want you to gain, well, as mentioned, we want you to get like work experience and kind of guidance on your career, but I think most importantly, a community. And whether that's as an applicant or a successful fellow, I think that we're already seeing that within our Discord community, that people want to meet other people who have interests like them, who are who love space. I think it's a very unique industry, the space industry, where you can be a nerd and like love Star Wars. You can also just be someone who really loves tech and looking at the stars, and you would get along because of your shared interest in kind of exploring or helping Earth with space. So there's so much that you can do together, and I think my biggest thing that I want applicants and people who become fellows is to gain is this community within Canada.
Which, based on the number of people watching, could be a very big community one day, which is exciting. Angelique, what are you hoping people will gain from the mentorship side of the program?
I think when people leave, I hope that they feel more evolved in both their personal and professional identities as future leader in space, and one that's equipped with an assortment of resources, both pertaining to where they could apply to, where they could access funding, what type of personal entrepreneurial ventures that they can embark on, and who their points of contacts are, both as friends in the community as well as guidance and mentors elsewhere. So I hope, I hope they gain all that. I'm sure they will.
I'm definitely sure they will. And Julia, what are you hoping that they'll gain from their, if they're lucky enough to be paired up with Sinclair Interplanetary?
We would also be very lucky, for the record. I hope that people in the course of their time with us feel comfortable wayfinding, both independently and the friendship and camaraderie of other like-minded people. I hope that any anxiety people feel about their own trajectory in their career is just kind of replaced by confidence. I would absolutely love that.
Yeah, that would be fantastic, because that'll propel people forward. And final word to you, Curtis, in terms of what you're hoping they'll gain if they're working out of Wyvern.
Well, they will gain a t-shirt. That's 100% guaranteed. So at the very least a t-shirt, that's the minimum viable floor that we're looking for. But realistically, like, I think like with a lot of the companies here, like GHG, Sinclair, Angelique's company as well. Like we're all trying to do something really exciting, new, and like bold. And I think if we can really kind of imbue that to whoever is able to be placed with these companies and the mentors that are they're helping them work through it, like I think that kind of big bold thinking would be like really exciting if they could bring that back to wherever they go in their career. So and yeah, like a t-shirt is really good too. So
that's what they'll gain most, the t-shirt to go with it. But yeah, no, I think that is a wonderful kind of final note to end on, the idea of, having these people going out in the world and being the ones defining what the space industry is going to be going forward, because these may be all young voices coming into this program, but these will be the people ultimately deciding what the future is for this industry, how good it can be, and how much we can accomplish together. So I really hope everyone listening online feels like they are a part of that and feel inspired and compelled to apply to be a part of this program, because as you can hear from everyone that's been a part of this panel, it's going to be a great group of people supporting you at the start of your career in the space industry. So I want to give a huge thanks to all the panelists for your wonderful insights. It's been great meeting you for the first time, mostly tonight, but also hearing about everything from your own personal life and everything that you're hoping to contribute in the space industry. I think everyone coming through the program is getting very lucky working with you. I also want to really thank the Zenith team for pulling together this fellowship, because I think everyone on the panel can agree that this is an incredibly important and much needed program to make sure that all Canadians have an ability to advance their dreams of space and space applications. So thank you for that. I'll pass the floor to you, Hira, for maybe some final thoughts from Zenith.
For sure, yeah. Thanks everyone, and as well our awesome panelists, and for working with us to develop this program. They've been here from the start, Sinclair and Wyvern being one of the first host companies onboarded, Angelique, one of our first mentors. So it's been great having you guys on board. And thank you, Bryn, for moderating. It's been great, chatting with you, and for working with SGAC to kind of make this event happen. And that's kind of it for me, but I'm going to stay on for 15 more minutes. I'll let our lovely panelists enjoy the rest of their evenings and they can hop off, but I'll stay on for 15 minutes to answer some fellowship specific questions. We do have another info session next Wednesday, October 6th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern with SEDS Canada on their YouTube channel, live stream. And so we'll also answer questions there, but since there's so many in the Slido, I'll take the time to answer those. But in the meantime, I'll let our panelists head off before I start.
Thank you so much, and have a good evening.
All right, it's just me now. So I'm speaking to my computer, but I think we're still live, which is great. So I'm going to get right into it. So the first question I see is approximately how many fellows will be selected to work this summer? So currently, as you saw, we have 6 host companies. We are constantly working to get more host companies on board, and we're also discussing with our host companies about their capacity to take more people. But right now we can guarantee that we intend to take 6 fellows right now. And so you keep posted as well as we are continuously developing things, but we're also intending to provide mentorship opportunities for those who are not selected as fellows but make it to our finalist round. So that's something that we're working on, that we've kind of discussed how we're gonna put that out there, but you guys heard it here first. There will be opportunities for those who don't get internships to also have mentorship. So more details to follow. The next question is, when will results come back, and is there an interview portion for this application? So there will be a couple of stages, about 3 beginning with this application round. So right now we're open until October 22nd. You can apply, finish up your essays, get your reference letters in by then. And after that, we'll kind of go into our selection to kind of sift through those applications. And then after we've sifted through, we have a phone interview stage, which is like 30-minute call, nothing too drastic. It's just kind of like getting to know you a bit better if you are selected after your application is reviewed. And then applicants who are successful from there will be then matched and sent to host companies who will decide who they'd like to interview based on all the things that we take in the application. So this process is going to take us into January of next year. So host company interviews can occur in December or January. It is a bit of a lengthy process, but we are intending to announce our class of fellows in January, maybe February, but January 2022. So there is an interview portion with the host company. Yeah, that will be for successful finalists. I hope that answered. So is this going to be a remote or in person? If you're talking about the host company working at an internship, some host companies do offer fully remote positions where the job function can be fully done online. And some companies do require you to be at least able to come into the office some days a week. And if your job is allowing you to stay home, they're also okay with that. But it's kind of like a hybrid. We're still kind of working with host companies, but we will make that information available on the website shortly. And especially if you do make it to the finalist round, that information will be provided to you. As for the mentorship, that will definitely be fully remote. All of our mentors can meet with you over a video call. We're hoping to have a geographic diversity. So if you're in, the Maritimes and your mentor is in BC, we would still love to match you with that person and facilitate virtual kind of meetings. And then for our summit, that will be dependent upon COVID. Part of the fellowship is sponsored travel for fellows to the summit. So if it is available to be in person, we will go full-fledged ahead to do that. And if it requires us to be a virtual, we will still try to make a very meaningful experience. I myself, with the Brooke Owens Fellowship, had a virtual summit. I was in Canada when it happened, but it was still a great time. And so we will take that experience to make sure that whether it's remote or in person, it'll be a great experience. The next question is, do you get to join the host company nearest to you, or do you decide for yourself? So these are kind of inputs that we will engage through the application and with the finalists. Ideally, we will try to make sure that there is a good fit, whether that means a geographic fit or finding ways to get you there. Right now, for this first year, we are not able to sponsor relocation costs, but we will work with applicants as well as host companies to see how best we can do that on a case-by-case basis. So you basically, if you make it to the finalist round, we'll be able to kind of provide inputs into if you have an interest in a specific company, but we do let all of our applicants know that there's potential for you to be matched with any one of our host organizations. Reason being that a lot of them are companies that you may not have heard of. So it's always good to kind of see what new experiences you can gauge. The next question is, what would be your advice to an electrical engineering student in their first few years of university if they wish to work in the space industry? So I was an electrical engineering student as well in my first few years, interested in space. And I think what I learned in the time that I was trying to find ways into the space industry is definitely trying to build like a network, trying to meet with other people who are interested in similar things as you, and just like going to events if you can. Doing things that are also like technical is very important. So like finding the Cube Satellite Club on your campus. If there isn't a Cube Satellite Club, maybe make one, or the Rocketry Club, or, you know, even just that Astronomy Society, or, you know, the Mars Habitat Club. Like, there's so many different interests within space. And if you're early in your career, I think it's always good to just kind of get into one of these areas where you're meeting other people, where you're testing out your skills, where you're talking with other folks and kind of learning what's out there and how your background can apply to that. I joined the Cube Satellite team. I also started a club for, you know, outreach and just like talking about space. So like, there's a lot of different ways to do it. And I think you can do that on a large scale, like being a leader, and you can also do it on a small scale by just kind of signing up. SEDS Canada is a great place to go. I will definitely plug them, and SGAC. Getting involved with those organizations is a great way to also get you those networks and get involved and kind of learn about space. But I could go on for hours about this, so feel free to like message me as well if you'd like on LinkedIn. So what counts as underrepresented? Our students from outside Ontario also outside underrepresented. So so the way that we have underrepresented kind of defined formally in our application is kind of varied, and I would encourage you to kind of check out the application for that. But we have people, the key ones being women, gender minorities, people of color, people in low income communities, and we're even looking at kind of geographic diversity as well. So that is a question on our application in terms of where you're located. But yeah, that's kind of where we're looking at. We also do have an option for other. So we are open to also learning ourselves what defines underrepresented. Yes, also people with disabilities is another one. So yeah, we do understand that people in Ontario do have kind of an advantage. And so we are also keen to get people from outside of Ontario into the program as much as we can. Is GPA an important factor when selecting applicants? So it's both a yes and no. So it's not like the most critical thing. We definitely don't want you to be failing out of school. We want you to have like good academic standing. But even if it's like just a bit below, we'd still encourage you to apply. It's not like we don't have a strict GPA requirement for that reason. So I'll give you some context. Myself, I actually failed a course in second year, and I talk about this openly now, but I failed math and I thought my entire career was over because I had failed a course. But that was not true. The following year, I landed my first internship, and the year after that, I got my first space internship. So it was just one course, right, that caused that blip in my transcript, but my academic standing was still not, you know, the bottom tier. It happens. School can be tough. So we just want to see that you're, you know, doing okay, that you are either whether you've had a blip and you're kind of working towards that. That's why we have these questions on our application, so that you can give us context about kind of what your story is. So yeah, basically, we just want you to be in good academic standing. And if you're just a bit below 2, that's fine as well, just as long as you're not on the verge of being out of your program. Another question from Kyla is, what sort of work would we be doing in an average day? Like, would our mentor give us a project to work on, or would we be checking them? So in terms of the work you would do day to day, that kind of is core to the internship. So that will depend on which host company you end up at. And I think you probably heard a little insight from Julia and Curtis, but that's kind of dependent on that. In terms of mentorship, it's more of like every month, every 2 months, or however frequency you agree on with your mentor, that you will meet with them and kind of talk about things. You might be finishing up a semester, so it's good to chat with them as you prepare for your internship. But it's not like projects or anything like that. You could shadow them if that's something you arrange with them, but that's outside of just kind of the meeting of every little bit. In terms of with the fellowship, we'll have kind of our own kind of programming. We'll try to facilitate events and kind of ways for you to meet people within the fellowship and outside. And that's more to come in the future, but yeah. And then Kyle also asks, what sort of opportunities are there for chem bio majors? Honestly, what we've been told from our host company is that any background, anyone should apply, and based on kind of what is available in the host organizations, there are ways to kind of, if they need a certain skill set, if you have that skill set, it doesn't matter about your formal degree name, but we will also make the information about general areas that host companies are looking available on the website. But if you're in engineering, in your chem bio engineering, you probably have a lot of overlapping skill sets that could also be applied to space. So yeah, I think basically what I'm trying to say is the door is open. We just want to see your application and see if we can make kind of a match in there. We have a couple minutes. I'm going to go till 8:40 p.m. Eastern. So I'll just answer a couple more, and then whatever is remaining, I will either try to answer on slide or directly, or if you can, we can try to address them at the next info session. This person anonymous asks, if you have worked in the space industry before, can I still apply? Yes, absolutely. I think that's the answer is yes, you can apply. It doesn't matter what your experience is. Just definitely showcase it to us. Even if you don't have experience in the space sector, you can still apply. Even if you don't have work experience, you can still apply. So again, we just want to learn about you and hear your story. So please, provide that information in your application. Anonymous asks, what parts of the application do you weigh most heavily? Quickly, we have our own kind of criteria on that. I think you could probably tell from what we're asking of you, what we're weighing, but yeah, it's kind of all equal, and we want you to work hard on all aspects of it to show who you are. I will answer. Yeah, I'll answer this question. Is there an opportunity each year? So our goal, this is our first year of the Zenith Fellowship. Our goal is to offer this every year. And we're building kind of that legacy to continue on to do that each year, and partners with our host companies to get more host companies next year, more mentors, and more opportunities for more students in the future. As you might know from the other programs in the US, they have varying amounts of fellows they take each year. And so we're hoping to get to similar areas as those other fellowships. So this year may be small for the first year, but we will try to facilitate as many opportunities as we can. But yes, absolutely next year we will have another fellowship. I'm getting a lot of are there specific engineering or physics, astrophysics opportunities? Basically, yes, our goal is to be multidisciplinary. I will be honest that many of the areas are STEM. Many of the things that we're looking for our host companies are looking for are STEM, but we do have some people wanting people in marketing and people in law. And so if you're in a non-traditional space background, still apply because there could be opportunities for you as well. So we will make this information available on the website in terms of what each host company is looking for. So do keep up to date on our social media and join our Discord because that's where we will kind of have updates as well, kind of on the fly. But yeah, it is 8:40 now. So unfortunately, we have to end here. But thank you for staying, those who did stay. And I hope all of you who are potential applicants will, at the very least, this will encourage you to join our Discord server. And if you want to ask questions there as well, by all means, you can. And just join this community of applicants. And then also, I hope this means that you will apply and we hope to see your application. But yeah, I guess that'll be it. And I'll wish you all a good night.